Hey there, everyone, and welcome to the course. Welcome to Poly 301. This is Research Methods in Political Science, in which we are going to be designing a research project from scratch this semester in an online format. We're going to perform empirical analysis on a topic of our choosing, and we're hopefully going to contribute to human knowledge on a topic in politics this semester. And so if that sounds daunting, if that sounds like something that is challenging, is difficult, is given the circumstances, maybe especially hard to do, you're absolutely right. This is a very difficult process indeed. Political science research is not easy. Take it from me. I'm somebody who does it all the time. But it is extremely rewarding. And I think that if we're able to work together in this class as an entire group, in this online format, we're going to arrive at great success in this class. And certainly many of my students in the past have gone on to produce research projects that have been presented at URCAD, the Undergraduate Research Creative Achievement Day, have been published in academic journals at the undergraduate level, they've been presented at national conferences and all kinds of other really great outcomes. So I think that regardless of your preparation, regardless of your background in research, if you're coming to this for the very first time with pretty much no prior research experience, if you're coming to this course with a lot of worry and fear about how hard it is, if you're coming to this course feeling extremely unmotivated or why are they making me do this, regardless of where you're at right now, and certainly all of those sort of positions, I completely understand. It might surprise you to know that a long time ago, I was in your shoes in the very same way, feeling trepidation and worry and confusion as to why I'm even being made to do the research process. But I got hooked and I started doing this for a living. And I really hope that by the end of the course, regardless of where you are right now, you'll come to appreciate the utility and perhaps even the fun of doing political science research as a vocation. So in this first kind of module video, what I'd like to do is just very broadly introduce kind of what we're doing as researchers. Get a chance for you to grasp an understanding of what we might call the research process. And so you'll see as you work on acquiring the textbook, hopefully over the next couple of weeks you'll get that textbook and you'll start to follow along with the chapters in that text. That this research process is extremely familiar because it essentially informs the chapters in the book and it informs the modules that we'll be following throughout the semester. And so the research process goes a little bit like this. First, we need a topic. And that's actually, ironically, the topic of this week and next week's classes. We're going to really think hard about coming up with a topic for a research project from scratch, which is, believe it or not, in my opinion, the single hardest thing to do in the research process altogether. And I often tell students that this is because the research process is a little bit like trying to build an airplane at 30,000 feet. Okay, you're already in motion, and here we are having to design, from scratch, this vehicle that's going to carry us safely to our destination. It's an incredibly difficult thing to do. It's arriving at a research, process like this from scratch. It's a little difficult because pretty much all research comes from an observation about the world around us that already sets us in motion. And so it's very artificial to come to a course and say, yes, I will propose a topic for research without that natural process of coming, encountering something that makes you inquisitive about the world around you, right? I mean, we can think back to the famous, experimentalists of the ages, right? Newton and the apple, right? If Newton wasn't sitting there and the apple hadn't hit him, right, he would have had no impetus to think about gravitation or whatever. It's maybe even an apocryphal story, but regardless, right? We come to the research process this week thinking about the topics for research that we might propose in a really artificial way. And so, in our class discussion that we'll be having later this week, next week as well, we're going to be thinking and brainstorming as a class about how to crack that first piece of the research process. And I think that the reason for this module, the reason why I want to introduce this whole thing to you right now, overwhelming as it might seem, is to really get you to think about the idea that the proposal of a topic is going to be a lot easier for you if you're aware of what's to come. right? Like if we use the airplane analogy again, right? If we're trying to build this aircraft at 30,000 feet while we're in the air currently in motion, we want to know maybe like what's up ahead, right? Are we expected to, need to break the sound barrier with this research? Are we expected to need to do a bunch of loop-to-loops, right? Are we going to need to land it on water? Like, what are the features of this vehicle that we're creating in the first place? What are we expected to have to put it through in terms of its purpose? And so essentially, this is the set on this slide, the set of steps that any good researcher will take in order to arrive at conclusions about a scientific phenomenon that they're interested in studying. So once you've got a topic for research, once you've decided that you have an understanding of a question that you want to know the answer to, at its most basic level of research is about answering a question. Once you've got this topic that leads to an analytical question, you're going to want to go through this whole set of steps. And at the end of those steps, lo and behold, you're going to have this fully formed, beautiful research project. So the second thing that you might do after you propose a topic is to think about what people have thought about this in the past. I know that a lot of research questions might seem like they come out of the blue and nobody's ever studied them before, but I can guarantee you that at least some political scientist out there has thought at least a little bit about the topics that you're interested in. And so we want to go into the literature. So we're going to do a lot in the course on understanding how to search the literature, how to read the literature. It's actually a very difficult thing to read. It's very technical, very hard to parse. One of the biggest challenges, actually, of the course is just being able to read what other scholars have written about our topics in the past. So just for purposes of illustration, if I were to throw out a few different topics, like what if I were interested in the topic of civil wars, broadly defined? I want to know why countries, like people who belong to the same country, start to fight each other, right? If I wanted to know something about that process, I would need to review the scholarly literature on civil wars, and I'd probably be reading all kinds of things about, studies of civil strife in, Northern Ireland and in Sri Lanka and in the United States and all kinds of other places where civil wars have happened, or civil conflicts. Maybe not things we could define as civil wars per se. Or that therein lies also some more complications, right? But in reviewing this literature, we'll hopefully be able to refine our topic and refine critically the question that will arise from our understanding of that topic, so that we can create a question that is not just any old question, but an analytical research question, a question that conforms to the principles that we'll talk about in a later module for asking good, tractable, by that I mean sort of workable questions that will fit into the very sort of rigid framework of empirical social science research. So after we have a topic in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be thinking about this literature on our way to devising these sort of really well-stated questions that we'll then seek to answer. After that, we're going to propose a theory. We want to know about, we want to develop a set of expectations. That is, hypotheses, formal hypotheses about the way we think the world works in general. So if we were to, propose some kind of research question, suppose we wanted to know about, the role of economic forces in causing civil wars to happen, right? Maybe we have in the back of our mind a hunch about the idea that when economies collapse, that's when societies will start to really fight each other, right? Bad economy means people get grumpier, there's a scarcity of resources, and then civil wars break out. And so we might want to tell a story in our mind, a theory about how that works. And so that's going to be the next step in the process. We want to write down our assumptions. Like, okay, well, I think the economy is bad. I think that's going to make people angry. There's going to be deprivation. There might be existing tensions and conflicts in a society, and that's going to create this spark that's going to lead to a breakdown. Writing that all out really allows us to discern whether or not our question even makes sense in the first place. After that front end of the research process, after we've gotten a chance to sort of get through steps 1 through 4 and think about just the world of ideas, what's been written before, right? How we might phrase a good question, and then how we might support that question with a story about the way the world works that makes sense to us on a conceptual level. That's when we get into the data side of things. And so the next step in any good research process is to figure out a way to measure things so that we can actually perform an analysis. right? Perform an analysis where we're able to determine with some degree of certainty whether or not there's an association between different variables, whether or not there's a pattern that plays out in the real world that supports our theory, that speaks to our question, that answers the question definitively or not. And so this, the next steps, 5 through 7, is really all about getting into the data, whatever that might be. So data could be quantitative, in which case we're measuring things with numbers, and then we're doing some kind of statistical analysis to determine whether or not, again, we've got support for the answer to our research question that we've proposed. Or it might be qualitative, which means that we are devising, some kind of observational method to figure out through either reading of archival histories or participant observation or some kind of, more, less quantitative again and more qualitative mode of determining the evidence in favor of or against the answer to our research question that we've devised. So the process of analyzing that data is where we get into the actual tools that we'll be learning in the course, both quantitative and qualitative, as it turns out, later in the semester. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, actually, we're going to want to convey all of that to an audience. And this is where I think a lot of students really struggle. This is where a lot of professional political scientists actually really struggle, is in trying to explain to an outside audience what you may have found. It's a very difficult process. It's a special kind of writing. It's what we might call technical writing. And so in the last part of the course, we're going to be learning a lot about how best to write and express what we've discovered through the course of this process in a way that informs an audience effectively. And in doing so, we're going to conclude with a set of statements about what this all means for the broader world around us. What the relevance of our findings are for the world. And so through all of these steps, right, all of these integral steps, we're going to be actually creating a piece of research that matters for the world around us. It informs an important topic that helps us learn something about civil wars, or about why people vote for Democrats or Republicans, or about anger in the political psychology of current partisans, or whether or not. Gosh, I don't know. There's a million questions, right? Do pet owners tend to have more conservative or liberal ideologies than non-pet owners? Some kind of question, right? That regardless of the actual topic that we're interested in, conforms to the same process, this age-old kind of scientific method for arriving at a conclusion. And so as you encounter this content for the first time, as you start to read the book and learn about proposing a topic for research, keep in mind that this is where we're going, right? You're going to want to propose topics for which there is some degree of relevant scholarly literature, for which you have some kind of view of the world, some kind of idea in the back of your head about the way the world works, and for which you believe that it may be possible to collect and analyze data, both quantitative and or qualitative, that will allow you to inform your hypothesis. And so since we know that this is all coming, right, hopefully this will allow you to narrow down the field of possible topics from literally anything in the world that has anything to do with politics to something that may be more appropriate for the research process. And so in the next module, if you follow me over to module 1.2, I'll be talking a bit about what makes for a good research question. And in certainly our first and second meetings, we'll be seeing a gigantic bevy of examples and having hopefully a very fruitful discussion about the research process and about what just interests us, which will allow you to go even further and dig even deeper into that very first of these 9 steps. So again, welcome to the course. This is the big overview. This is what we're doing this semester from week 1 to the end of the course. And I'm very encouraged and I'm very excited to encourage you that regardless of your preparation, regardless of your trepidation, many students in the past, and you're going to be one of them, have been extremely successful in designing and implementing a research project that successfully completes all 9 of these really important steps. So welcome, and follow me to Module 1.2 for the next slate of content.